They said I was too skinny for football, a story inspired by the rise of Cristiano Ronaldo. They said I was too skinny for soccer, too fragile, too emotional, a joke, a crybaby from the forgotten island. I remember hearing them laugh as I cried silently far from home, hidden in a room that smelled of fear and sweat. I was 11 years old, alone, without my parents, and they made sure I felt it. They said my body couldn't handle soccer, that I should grow up first, or give up. But I had something they couldn't see, and when they realized, I was already way ahead. They humiliated me, then they feared me, and in the end, they applauded me. But to get there, I had to bleed, long before I could shine. They told me I was too skinny for football, too soft, too sensitive. They said boys like me don't make it, that I should find a real job, lower my dreams and accept my place. And for a while, I almost believed them. I was just a kid from a small island, no name, no money, and no body built for war. I didn't look like a champion. I didn't sound like one. And every time I failed, they reminded me why I'd never become one. But there's something they never understood. You don't build legends in comfort. You build them in hunger, in tears, in silence. And that silence? It screamed louder than any crowd I'd ever play for. In this video, I'm going to show you what they didn't see. I'll take you behind the highlight reels, beyond the trophies, and deep into the wounds I had to carry long before I was ever called great. Because greatness isn't gifted, it's earned, through sweat, through pain, through nights so dark you forget who you are, and mornings where you fight to remember. If you've ever been underestimated, judged by your appearance, laughed at for your dreams, or told you're too much or not enough, this story is yours too. And by the end, you'll understand why they didn't make me. They tried to break me and failed. So before we dive in, I want you to do two things. Hit that like button if you believe pain can become power. Subscribe to this channel if you want to keep hearing stories that prove no one defines your worth but you. And drop a comment telling me what country and city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Let's begin. Let's go back. Before the fame, before the muscles, before the world knew my name. I didn't grow up with luxury, not with options. I grew up with a ball, a street, and a mother who worked herself to the bone so we could eat. I was born on an island, Madeira. Beautiful, yes, but far from opportunity, far from the spotlight, and even further from the football world they all worshipped on the mainland. My father worked at a local football club, cleaning up after matches. When he wasn't working, he was drinking. When he wasn't drinking, he was silent. I loved him, but I feared becoming him. I feared what happens to a man when he stops chasing something. I feared the emptiness I saw in his eyes every night. But me, I had something. I didn't know what to call it. Fire, maybe. Madness, maybe. But it burned. And the ball was the only thing that kept it alive. I'd kick it against the wall until my foot blistered. I'd dribble around rocks, trash, broken glass, anything that made me better. That wall was my first coach. That street was my first stadium. Other kids played for fun. I played like my life depended on it, because in a way, it did. At school, they laughed at me, not because I was funny, but because I was small, thin, nervous. My clothes didn't fit right. My accent was different. My eyes didn't hide how badly I wanted this. That made me easy to mock, easy to underestimate. You'll never make it off this island, they'd say. You're too skinny to play real football. Those words stayed with me longer than the bruises. But I didn't argue. I trained. When they played video games, I ran sprints up hills. When they slept, I did sit-ups until I couldn't feel my stomach. When they went to parties, I trained alone in the dark. I was the weird kid, the obsessed one, the one who didn't know how to just chill. And I didn't care. Obsession was all I had. I wasn't born with size or connections or money. But I could control how hard I worked. And I worked like my family's future depended on it, because it did. There were days I played so hard I'd come home dizzy. Nights I cried myself to sleep, listening to my parents argue through the walls. My mother tried to protect me, but I could hear the strain in her voice. I could hear her breaking. That's when I made the decision. If football was my way out, then I wasn't just playing anymore. I was fighting. I was 8 years old, playing with kids twice my size. Not because I wanted a challenge, because I needed to be seen. One afternoon I dribbled past a defender and a taller boy shoved me to the ground. Hard. My elbow scraped, my shoulder stung. He stood over me laughing. "Too weak, go home." I didn't cry, not that time. I stood up, looked him straight in the eyes and said, "You'll remember me." He laughed even harder. But deep down, I knew I'd be right. Not because I was special, because I refused to be forgotten. And from that day forward, I trained like I was chasing that moment. Not to prove them wrong, but to prove me right. I started running with weights tied to my ankles. I practiced headers until I had headaches. I watched older players, studying every move, every breath, every mistake. I asked questions. I watched tapes. I trained harder than boys twice my size because I had to close the gap. There was no plan B, no backup dream. It was football or nothing. At night, when everyone else was asleep, I would stare at the ceiling and whisper to myself, "They're wrong about you. You know that, right?" Some nights I believed it. Some nights I didn't. But I kept whispering anyway. That's what they don't tell you about chasing a dream. It's not just about talent. It's about what you do when no one's watching, when no one believes in you, when your body wants to quit, but your mind won't let it. Eventually, people around me started noticing, coaches, scouts, even strangers. They'd say, "That boy, there's something different about him." But even then, it wasn't enough, not yet. Because talent might open a door, but obsession breaks it down. I wasn't the strongest, the biggest, or the most polished, but I was willing to bleed for this every single day, and that's what made the difference. I was 11 when I left home. 11, still a child in most people's eyes. But I already knew what I wanted, and I knew no one was going to hand it to me. So I said goodbye to my mother with my bag on my back and a fire in my chest. She tried not to cry, but her eyes gave her away. Mine too. I got on the plane alone, headed for Lisbon, with a scholarship to join a football academy. But no one prepares you for the sound of silence in a place where no one knows your name. Lisbon was a different world, bigger, faster, colder. I came from an island where I knew every corner, every crack in the pavement. Now I was dropped in a dorm with strangers who didn't speak like me, didn't dress like me, and didn't think like me. I tried to be friendly, tried to belong, but the boys made it clear. I was the outsider. They laughed at my accent, imitated how I spoke, called me island boy like it was an insult. At first, I stayed quiet, just nodded, tried to act like it didn't bother me. But at night, when the lights went out, I'd pull the covers over my head and cry. I missed my mother's cooking. I missed my father, even in silence. I missed the sea breeze, the rhythm of home. But most of all, I missed feeling like I mattered. Because in Lisbon, no one cared who I was, and if I wanted them to care, I had to earn it. So I trained, harder than before. While others joked in the locker room, I was doing extra laps. When they went out on weekends, I stayed in the gym. I wasn't just fighting for a spot, I was fighting for survival. Every sprint, every drill, every painful repetition was a message: you won't forget me. Still, I struggled. The competition was brutal. These weren't kids from the street anymore. These were elite players, stronger, faster, more polished, and I was just the scrawny kid with tears in his eyes and a chip on his shoulder. I started losing confidence. My first few games were average. I missed passes, made bad decisions. One coach even said, maybe we expected too much from this one. Those words stung worse than any kick to the leg. So I stopped talking, completely. I became the quiet one, The one who stared at the ground, nodded yes or no, and kept his mouth shut. Not because I had nothing to say, because I was afraid of saying the wrong thing. But silence can become fuel if you let it. And I let it burn. One night I stayed late on the pitch, long after practice ended. It was raining, cold. Everyone else had gone home. I stayed and practiced free kicks for 2 hours, slipping, falling, standing up again. When I came back inside, soaked and shivering, a coach saw me and said, "You'll get sick doing this." I looked him in the eye and said, "I'd rather be sick than forgotten." He never questioned me again. The following week, something changed. I scored 2 goals in a scrimmage, then 3 in the next match. Then I started running faster than anyone else on the field. I felt something shift, not just in my body, but in my belief. It wasn't that the pain went away, it was that I learned to use it. Every insult, fuel. Every night I cried, weight lifted. Every voice that doubted me, echoes I turned into rhythm. And little by little they stopped laughing. They stopped mocking my voice. They started passing me the ball. I still missed home every night. But the silence didn't crush me anymore. It trained me, strengthened me. In Lisbon, I didn't just become a better player, I became a warrior. Because when you felt that kind of loneliness, that kind of isolation, and survived, there's nothing on a football pitch that can break you. Not pressure, not pain, not the spotlight. I stopped trying to be liked, and I started becoming unforgettable. I started hearing it more often now. He's too skinny, too light for a real match. Can't hold his ground. Push him once and he flies. I thought coming to Lisbon was the hardest part, leaving my family, my island, my childhood behind, but I was wrong. The hardest part was realizing that even here, even after everything I sacrificed, people still didn't believe in me. And this time, it wasn't about my accent. It was about my body. No matter how fast I was, no matter how technical my footwork became, they only saw the frame. The bones, the lack of muscle, the way I got knocked down too easily in duels. They said I couldn't last at the next level, that the physicality of real football would eat me alive. Some coaches hesitated to put me in important matches. Teammates didn't pass me the ball in tight plays. Scouts praised my speed and dribbling, then whispered about my size when I turned my back. I heard all of it, every comment, every doubt, and each one carved something deeper into me. I could have let it break me, could have accepted their truth, but I didn't. Instead, I declared war on my own body. I started waking up earlier, training longer, lifting heavier. While everyone else was asleep, I was doing push-ups in silence. While they recovered, I was running stairs. I read books about nutrition, studied how the body works. I made eating a science. Every bite, every rep, every drop of sweat had a purpose. I wasn't trying to look good. I was trying to survive. I was tired of being thrown to the ground like I didn't belong. Tired of hearing that my speed meant nothing without strength. So I trained until my muscles shook. I trained until my arms didn't look like twigs anymore, until my legs felt like they were made of stone. And I didn't tell anyone. No Instagram, no celebration, no bragging. I wanted them to see the results before I said a word. The next time I stepped on the pitch, I didn't just move faster. I moved with weight, with presence. I started winning challenges, holding my ground, making tackles. I wasn't just fast, I was dangerous. People started noticing. Is that the same kid? He looks different. Where did that strength come from? But I didn't answer. I just kept training. That season something clicked, not just physically, mentally. I stopped caring about impressing anyone. I started playing for me. I stopped playing scared. I stopped asking for permission. And once I let go of the need to prove myself, I became unshakable. One day, we had a scrimmage against older players. They were bigger, stronger, more experienced. I could feel the tension in the air before the match. Some of the younger guys looked at me like, "You sure you want to do this?" I nodded, and when the whistle blew, I made sure the first ball came to me. The first defender tried to body me off the ball. I absorbed it and turned. The second tried to tackle me. Too slow. I weaved through 3 players, launched a rocket from outside the box, and it smashed the net. Silence. Then claps. Then respect. But I didn't smile, because I wasn't done. That day I scored 3 goals and assisted another. But more than that, I didn't fall once. I didn't get shoved off balance. I didn't get bullied. For the first time, I felt like I owned the field. Not rented, not borrowed, owned. After the match, a coach pulled me aside and said, "You're starting to look like a professional." And for the first time, I believed it. Not because of the compliment, but because I knew what it took to hear it. It wasn't magic, it wasn't luck, it was pain, it was obsession, it was invisible work done in the dark. People love to praise the end result, but they never see the nights you train while your legs tremble, the meals you force down when you're already full, the isolation you endure because no one understands the standard you're chasing. They just see the goal, not the grind. And I was still grinding, every day, every minute, because being strong wasn't the goal, being unstoppable was. It was just another match, or at least that's what they told me. A friendly against a visiting English team. Nothing official, no pressure, just an exhibition. But I could feel something was different. The way the coaches were acting, the way the players held back, the way they told me to just enjoy the game. When they say that, it usually means something big is watching. I stepped onto the pitch like I always did, focused, silent, burning inside. I didn't care who was on the other side. I only knew that today, more than ever, I needed to leave a mark. From the first whistle, I was everywhere, fast, sharp, relentless. I took risks. I played with fire. I cut through defenders like they weren't there. I didn't just want to impress. I wanted to make them uncomfortable. I wanted to haunt them. I wanted someone in the stands to say, "Who the hell is that kid?" By halftime, I had scored once, assisted twice, and forced a penalty. But I wasn't satisfied. I wanted more. I could feel the eyes. Someone was watching, and I needed them to remember me. After the match, as I walked back to the locker room, a man in a black coat stood near the tunnel. He wasn't clapping, he wasn't smiling, just observing. Cold, calculated. He didn't speak to me that day. But 2 days later, my coach called me into his office. He said a club in England had asked about me, Manchester United. At first, I thought it was a joke. I laughed, waiting for the punchline. But my coach didn't laugh. He just looked me in the eyes and said, "They saw something and they want you to come." The words hit me like a train. Manchester United, the club I watched on TV from a tiny box in my living room on the island. Beckham, Giggs, Scholes, Roy Keane, that Manchester United. And now they were looking at me. I didn't scream. I didn't jump. I just sat there, silent, as my heart tried to rip through my chest. I had dreamed of this moment 1,000 times, but nothing prepares you for when it actually knocks on your door. They invited me to train with them, to travel to England. Not a contract, not a promise, just a chance. And that's all I needed. When I got home, I didn't tell many people, just my mother. She cried immediately, not from fear, but from recognition. She knew what this meant. She knew how far we had come. She remembered the nights I cried in Lisbon, the pain, the sacrifice. And now, a window had opened. The trip was short. A few days. But I made them count. Every touch, every sprint, every movement, I gave everything. I studied their players like a scientist studies data. Their speed, their control, their composure. They were machines. But I wasn't afraid, because I hadn't come this far to admire. I came to compete. Sir Alex Ferguson watched from the sidelines. I didn't know what he was thinking. He didn't say much, just nodded now and then. But I noticed his eyes never left me, and that was enough. On the final day, after our last session, one of the staff pulled me aside and said, "He likes you." That's all he said. But those words cracked something open inside me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I laid in bed, staring at the ceiling of the hotel room, trying to process what was happening. Me, a boy who juggled oranges on cracked pavement. A kid mocked for crying too much and eating too little. Now I was training with one of the biggest clubs in the world, and for the first time, it felt like the dream wasn't just mine anymore. It was becoming real. A few weeks later, the call came. They wanted to sign me, not loan me, not test me, sign me. Manchester United was officially offering me a contract. My mother cried again. I stayed quiet, not because I wasn't happy, but because I couldn't believe it. I had imagined this for so long that it felt unreal to actually touch it. We didn't celebrate with champagne or fireworks. We celebrated with silence, with tears, with long hugs, because we knew what it took to get here. And we knew it was only the beginning. The day I arrived in Manchester, it was raining. Not just the kind of rain that wets your clothes, the kind that reminds you you're not home anymore. Everything felt different. The language, the streets, the energy. Even the way the air moved felt heavier. This wasn't Portugal. This wasn't a warm island or a quiet academy in Lisbon. This was England. And the Premier League didn't care who I was or what I had survived to get here. No one clapped when I walked into the locker room. No one offered a warm welcome. They looked at me like I was a child with nice shoes, and maybe I was. I was 17, skinny again compared to these giants, but sharper, harder. I had come prepared. At least I thought I had. The first few training sessions were a shock. I'd never seen speed like that. Not just with the ball, but in decision-making. The tackles were ruthless. The tempo didn't slow down. I was used to being the fastest, the flashiest. But here, I was just another kid trying to survive. And then came the whispers. He plays like a showman. Too many tricks, not enough discipline. Style over substance. I wanted to scream. They didn't know me, didn't know the hours behind every move I made, didn't understand that the dribbles weren't for attention. They were weapons I had carved from pain. But in this league, perception was power, and perception was working against me. Then came my debut. Old Trafford, full stadium, massive expectations. I remember stepping onto that pitch and hearing the crowd, the roar, the pressure. My legs felt light, but my chest was heavy. I was finally here, but I knew one bad performance could bury me, so I played like my life depended on it. And it showed. I danced past defenders, delivered crosses, created chances. The crowd began to buzz every time I touched the ball. I could feel it, respect beginning to form, maybe even awe. But inside the locker room, it was different. Veterans didn't like it. Some thought I was too flashy, too hungry for the spotlight. They didn't care that I trained harder than anyone. They only saw a kid stealing attention. One of them confronted me after a match. "Cut the circus," he said. "This is England, not a talent show." I nodded, didn't argue. But inside I was boiling because they didn't see the 5 a.m. runs, the bruises, the nights alone perfecting every step over, every feint. They just saw the shine, not the scars. Sir Alex saw it differently. He pulled me aside one day and said, "They'll hate you before they respect you. Keep going." That sentence lived in my bones. So I did keep going. And every week I got stronger, sharper, more dangerous. I learned how to use the gym. I studied defenders like puzzles. I adjusted my game, kept the flair but sharpened the bite. I started scoring, started assisting, started silencing stadiums full of strangers. But the media wasn't done with me either. They called me arrogant, said I cared more about mirrors than medals, wrote that I posed too much, celebrated too hard, cared too little about the team. But they didn't know what I knew. They didn't know that for every goal I scored, a piece of that scared boy from Madeira disappeared. That I wasn't just chasing titles, I was escaping the ghost of failure. And when people tried to drag me back down, I didn't respond with words. I responded with numbers, with goals, with wins, with work. The first time I was booed at an away game, I smiled, because hate meant I mattered. And I'd rather be hated for being myself than loved for being what they wanted. I wasn't here to be accepted. I was here to be unstoppable. By the end of that season, people had stopped asking if I belonged. Now they asked, what will he become? And I had only just begun. I couldn't stand it. Being second, being almost, being praised, but never feared. Even after everything I had done, everything I had proven, I still felt something missing. I was good, but not the best. I was fast, but not unstoppable. I was scoring, but not dominating. And that thought ate at me. Every time I watched a teammate lift a trophy, I clapped. But inside, something screamed, that should have been me. That will be me. That's when I made the decision. I wasn't going to be just another player. I wasn't going to be remembered for a few nice goals or flashy footwork. I wanted to be the one they talked about for decades, the one they feared before kickoff, the one who didn't just win games, changed the way the game was played. But that kind of legacy doesn't come with talent. It comes with obsession, and obsession has a price. I stopped going out. I stopped eating what everyone else ate. While others had cheat days, I counted every calorie. While they slept 8 hours, I woke up before the sun. I built a gym in my house, not for convenience, for control. I needed full command of my body, every muscle, every fiber. They laughed at first, called me crazy, said I was too serious, but I wasn't training for fun. I was training to become a weapon. I studied my own matches like a scientist dissects cells, paused, rewound, analyzed. I took notes on my own body. Not just what I did wrong, but how I could squeeze more. More power, more precision, more pain tolerance. Every movement had to matter. Every second had to serve the goal. I started training twice a day, 3 when I could. My rest became calculated. My recovery became ritual. Ice baths, cryotherapy, stretching routines no one had heard of yet. I was building something that could outlast time, critics, and injury. But the cost was real. I lost people. Friends stopped calling. Some teammates kept their distance. Even family sometimes didn't understand. Why don't you relax? They'd ask. Because I can't, because I remember what it felt like to be laughed at, to be called too skinny, too weak, too dramatic, and I never want to feel that again. I remember sleeping in a small room in Lisbon, alone, eating canned food, watching football on a broken TV, whispering to myself that one day I'd be great. And now that I was getting close, I wasn't letting anything slow me down. Even love took a back seat. I had relationships, sure, but nothing lasted long. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much about this. Football wasn't part of my life. It was my life. And most people couldn't live in that kind of shadow. Some days I woke up with my body sore from head to toe, but I trained anyway. Some nights I went to sleep with my mind screaming at me, "You're still not enough." And I used that as fuel. I didn't want comfort, I wanted fire, because I'd seen what comfort did to people. I saw it in my father. Comfort becomes weakness, and weakness becomes regret. So I chased discomfort. I trained until I vomited, lifted until my muscles trembled, played through injuries, refused excuses. And slowly, something changed. My body transformed, my speed exploded, my headers became lethal, my free kicks became deadly. My presence on the field began to shift. Defenders no longer just marked me, they feared me. And that was the goal all along, not just to win, but to break the idea that I could be stopped. And the funny thing is, the more I sacrificed, the more people talked. Not just fans, but legends. Players I used to idolize started mentioning my name. Commentators debated if I was now one of the best, but I didn't listen to any of it, because obsession doesn't rest on compliments, it survives on criticism. And I still had more to prove. I didn't want to be great. I wanted to be undeniable. I never asked for a rivalry, but sometimes the world hands you a mirror and dares you to look. At first I only heard whispers. There's a kid in Barcelona, left foot, low center of gravity, quiet. They say he's the future. I didn't pay attention. Not at first. I was too busy building my body, sharpening my mind, bleeding for every inch of respect in England. But then the comparisons started. Not questions, comparisons. Messi or Ronaldo? Who's better? Who's more complete? Who's more humble? At first, it felt like a compliment to even be mentioned in the same sentence. But slowly, it turned into a cage. No matter how many goals I scored, how many titles I lifted, how much I sacrificed, there was always someone saying, "But Messi." They called him the natural, the genius, the born prodigy who made it look easy. They called me the machine, the manufactured, the one who forced greatness into existence, and maybe they were right. But what they didn't understand is that my fight wasn't against him. It was against what he represented. He was everything I wasn't. Small, silent, adored by fans for his humility. While I was loud, sharp, polarizing, people loved to love him, and they loved to doubt me. No matter what I did, they said he was purer, that I was chasing something he was born with. And for a long time, that haunted me. I watched his matches, not out of admiration, but out of necessity. If he scored 2, I needed 3. If he broke a record, I needed to erase it. Every headline that praised him was a knife I sharpened. I trained harder, scored more, celebrated louder, because if the world insisted on this war, then I wasn't going to be the quiet one. I refused to be his shadow, and the more they tried to push me there, the brighter I burned. But here's the truth they don't tell you. Comparison can destroy a man. It can eat your soul from the inside out if you let it. For a while, it almost got to me. I started playing to prove something instead of playing to dominate. I became obsessed with the noise, obsessed with the polls, the rankings, the pundits' opinions. And one night, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the man staring back. He wasn't chasing a dream anymore. He was chasing someone else's spotlight. That was the moment I made a choice. If I was going to be compared, if I was going to carry this rivalry forever, then I would use it. I would let it sharpen me, not shake me. So I stopped chasing Messi. I started chasing immortality, not to be better than him, but to become undeniable on my own terms. I focused on longevity, on evolution, on building a career so complete, so terrifyingly consistent that no comparison could touch it. I wasn't going to burn out like a shooting star. I was going to rise like a planet and stay there, and in a strange way, he helped me do that. Messi made me better, not because he beat me, but because he forced me to become something unbreakable. You see, some people need rivals. I needed war, because without it, I wouldn't have pushed past my limits. I wouldn't have transformed pain into precision. I wouldn't have stared down the entire football world and said, "You don't get to decide who I am." Let them debate, let them argue. While they did, I worked. And while they picked sides, I made history. Because whether they chose him or me, they were still saying my name. They see the trophies. They see the goals, the records, the headlines. They see the mansions, the cars, the lights. And they think that's what winning feels like. But what they don't see is the cost. They don't see the mornings I wake up and my body doesn't move the way it used to. They don't see the days I look in the mirror and question if I'm still hungry enough. They don't see the silence behind the stadium noise, because winning has weight, a weight that grows every time you raise the bar, a weight you carry alone, even when millions are watching. At first, every victory felt like a gift. Every goal felt like fuel. Every headline, a reminder that I had made it, but the more I won, the more they expected. And the more they expected, the less I could be human. You lose one match, and they call it decline. Miss one penalty, and they say you're done. Show one moment of frustration, and they call you unstable. I was no longer allowed to feel. I was a symbol now, and symbols don't bleed. But I did. There were nights I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling in a hotel room, surrounded by luxury, and still feel empty. Not because I wasn't grateful, but because I had no space to breathe. I couldn't show weakness. I couldn't complain. I couldn't say, I'm tired, because champions don't get tired. Champions perform, champions deliver, champions win again and again until the world forgets they're even human. And if you stop delivering, they find someone else. So I kept going, kept smiling for cameras, kept signing shirts, kept training while everyone else rested. And yet, the more I gave, the more they wanted. At times, I felt like a prisoner in my own success. I couldn't walk down a street without phones in my face, couldn't sit at dinner without someone judging what I ate, couldn't celebrate a goal without people analyzing my body language. I started calculating every move, every step, every word. People don't admire champions, they consume them. And when they're done consuming, they turn on you. I remember reading articles saying I was arrogant, that I was too proud, too selfish, too obsessed, that I only played for myself. But none of them knew what I carried on my back. Every time I stepped onto a pitch, I carried my family, my country, my younger self, my father's ghost. Every goal was a scream from that boy who used to cry alone in Lisbon. Every sprint was a refusal to let the world forget where I came from. But they didn't want that story. They wanted the brand, the icon, the machine, and the machine couldn't break. So I became colder, more focused, less forgiving. Not because I wanted to be that way, but because that's what survival looked like at the top. The higher you climb, the thinner the air, the lonelier it gets. Everyone says they want the crown until they realize it comes with chains. Even the people close to me changed. Some only saw the fame, not the fire. Some only wanted to stand next to the throne but not help carry it. The pressure didn't stop at the final whistle. It followed me home. It slept in the room with me. It whispered in my ear when no one else was around. What if you lose your form? What if this is your last season at the top? What if the world forgets you? That voice never stops. It just gets quieter when you're winning, but it never leaves. And yet, I chose this. I asked for this. Not the fame, not the pressure, but the pursuit of greatness. And if this was the price, I would pay it again and again. Because as heavy as winning is, regret is heavier. I've seen what it does to people, what it did to my father, what it does to players who quit too soon, who settle, who give up when it gets uncomfortable. That will never be me. I would rather carry the world on my shoulders than wake up one day and wonder what if. But still, even the strongest have limits. And mine was starting to crack. Because when you build your entire identity around being unstoppable, what happens when you feel yourself slowing down? What happens when the roar of the crowd can't silence the voice inside your head? It doesn't happen all at once. You don't just wake up and say, I'm broken. No, it creeps in slowly, quietly. It starts with a bad night of sleep, then two. Then you miss a step in training, feel a sting in your calf, brush it off, then another. And before you know it, you're tired, and not just in your legs, tired in your soul. That's what happened to me. Everyone saw the same version of me, strong, driven, disciplined, but inside, something was slipping. At first, I thought it was just fatigue, a long season, too many games, too many flights, but deep down, I knew it was something else. I started asking questions I'd never asked before. Why am I still doing this? Why does it feel like a job now? Why am I smiling for cameras when I feel numb inside? I wasn't just physically tired, I was emotionally drained. The years of pressure, the perfectionism, the sacrifice, they had caught up to me. My body still looked like a machine, but the engine inside was shaking. One night, I sat alone in a hotel room after a Champions League match. We had won. I had scored. The headlines were glowing, but I felt nothing. No joy, no release, just silence. And in that silence I broke. I started crying. Not like the controlled tears of a man holding it together, but the raw kind. The kind you cry when no one's watching and you realize you're lost. For the first time in my life, I didn't want to play football the next day, not because I was injured, because I didn't recognize the version of me that was doing it. All my life, football had been the answer, the escape, the purpose. Now it felt like a mask I couldn't take off. I was tired of being perfect, tired of pretending I wasn't human, tired of being a brand instead of a person. I didn't want to train, didn't want to smile, didn't want to fight. And that scared me more than anything. Because if football wasn't my refuge anymore, what did I have left? I thought about quitting, just walking away, shutting it all down and disappearing. I had made my mark. I had broken records. I had nothing left to prove. That's what I told myself. But deep down, I knew it wasn't true. I still had one more thing to fight for. Myself. Not the version the world knew, not the statue they built, but the boy who played barefoot in Madeira, chasing a dream no one else believed in. I needed to find him again. I needed to remember why I started, not for the fans, not for the money, not for the fame, but for the feeling of a ball at my feet, the sound of my heartbeat racing down the field. The fire of proving to myself that I was still alive. So I disconnected, turned off the noise, stopped reading the headlines, stopped checking stats. I went back to the basics. Morning jogs without music, touch drills in silence, watching old tapes, not of my greatest moments, but of my earliest, to remember. And little by little I started breathing again. Not as a product, not as a champion, but as a man. A man who had climbed too high, too fast, for too long, and forgot what the ground felt like. But now I was grounded again, and the fire that had gone out started flickering, not because of the crowd, not because of a title, because of the silence. The same silence that once broke me, now helped rebuild me. And when I stepped onto the pitch again, it wasn't for them, it was for me. I don't remember the exact day it changed. It wasn't a single moment, a loud realization, or a perfect speech in the locker room. It was something quieter, something that built itself slowly, like a sunrise you don't notice until the light is already filling the room. I had spent years carrying the weight of being the best, years trying to prove that I deserved every cheer, every chant, every crown. I built a life out of expectations. I let the pressure carve its initials into my bones. And then I nearly let it destroy me. But after that night, the one where I cried alone, the one where I almost walked away, something shifted inside me. I started waking up lighter. Not because the pressure disappeared, it didn't, but because I stopped letting it own me. I realized I didn't need to carry football on my back anymore. I only needed to carry myself, that boy from the island. The one who kicked a ball against the wall until it came back with answers. The one who trained not to be famous, but to feel alive. So I stopped chasing approval. I stopped trying to be perfect. I started playing with joy again, the kind of joy that can't be measured by stats or headlines. The kind you can only feel in your chest when the ball hits your foot and everything else disappears. I remember stepping onto the pitch one afternoon and noticing how quiet my mind was. No overthinking, no doubts, no voices comparing me to anyone else. Just the grass under my boots and the game I fell in love with before the world knew my name. That day, I didn't score a hat trick. I didn't break any record. But I smiled, really smiled. And that meant more to me than any trophy. I started laughing more in training, talking more with the young players, helping instead of competing. I saw the hunger in their eyes, the same hunger I used to have, and I wanted to feed it, not fear it. For the first time, I wasn't trying to outshine anyone. I was trying to lift them. That's when I realized freedom doesn't come from proving you're the best. It comes from knowing you don't have to anymore. I had already climbed the mountain. I had already heard the roar of the world. Now I just wanted to breathe up there, to enjoy the view, to remind myself why I climbed it in the first place. I started playing smarter, more efficiently. I didn't run to show off. I ran to create space. I didn't scream after goals. I smiled and pointed to the sky. My game matured. My soul matured with it. I wasn't fueled by revenge anymore. I was fueled by peace. Some people noticed. Commentators said, "He's changed. He's more calm, more centered." But they didn't know what it took to get there. The breakdowns, the silence, the nights I nearly let it all go, the screams no one heard, and yet that's the irony. I had to break to finally play free. I remember one match in particular. Late in my career, new team, new league, new country. The stadium was full, but I wasn't nervous. I looked into the crowd and saw faces that didn't care about my past. They just came to feel something, so I gave it to them. Not with tricks or records, but with presence. I touched the ball like it mattered, passed like I trusted, shot like I had nothing to lose. I wasn't chasing legacy, I was living it. And when I scored that night, I didn't run. I didn't rip off my shirt or drop to my knees. I just stood there, arms open, eyes to the sky, grateful. Not for the goal, for the freedom. That was the difference. I wasn't playing to escape my pain anymore. I was playing to celebrate that I survived it. And that kind of fire, it burns brighter than any spotlight. Because when you finally make peace with your past, no critic, no failure, no shadow can take your joy away. People still tried to compare me, still put me in debates, still asked, is he the greatest? I stopped answering that question a long time ago, because it was never about being the greatest. It was about becoming whole, and on that pitch, I finally was. I used to think football was everything. For most of my life it was. It was the air I breathed, the fire that woke me up at dawn, the pain that pushed me to outwork everyone. It was my escape from poverty, from loneliness, from doubt. It gave me purpose. It gave me power. It gave me a name. But now, it gave me something else. Clarity. You see, when you're young, the game feels like war. You fight for minutes, for recognition, for survival. Every match is a battlefield. Every goal is a shield. Every critic is an enemy. And for years, I fought. Hard, ruthlessly, relentlessly. But I'm not at war anymore. Somewhere along the way, football stopped being just a fight. It became something deeper, something spiritual. It became my language, my way of speaking to a world that once ignored me, my way of healing the wounds no one else could see, my way of honoring the boy I used to be and the man I became in spite of everything. Now, when I walk onto a pitch, I don't feel pressure. I feel peace, because I know who I am, even if no one else claps, even if no one else sees. I am not the records. I am not the stats. I am not the Ballon d'Ors or the magazine covers. I'm the boy who never gave up, the man who outlasted the doubt, the soul that refused to shrink. And that's more than a game. I see kids now with stars in their eyes and phones in their hands. They chase followers instead of form, chase applause instead of discipline. I get it, I really do. The world has changed, but some things shouldn't. The hunger, the solitude, the hours no one sees, the tears behind the glory. That's still the path. So I talk to them, not as a celebrity, not as a superstar, as a survivor. I tell them about Madeira, about leaving home at 12, about training with weights on my ankles, about crying alone in a dorm room, eating tuna and dreaming of stadiums. I tell them success isn't pretty, it's painful, it's boring, it's lonely. But if you endure it, if you sacrifice for it, You don't just become a player, you become something the world can't touch. A force, a legacy, a voice that echoes even when your boots come off. Because eventually, every career ends, the goals slow down, the legs get heavier, the roar of the crowd fades. But character, that's forever. The way you treated people, the way you carried yourself when no one was looking, the work you did when no one believed, that's what remains. That's the true scoreboard. And for me, that's what I'm proudest of. Not the trophies, not the records, but the fact that I never stopped. Not when they laughed, not when they doubted, not even when I doubted myself. I gave everything, and now I give it forward. I coach, I mentor, I inspire. Not to be remembered, but to make sure someone else doesn't give up when it gets hard. Because someone did that for me, and I never forgot. The game gave me everything, and I gave it back, not just with goals, but with heart, with soul, with the truth of who I am. And maybe that's the real win, not the medals, not the glory, but knowing that even after the lights go out, your fire still burns in someone else. In the end, it wasn't about proving I was the best. It was about proving I was never weak enough to quit, because when the world said I was too skinny, I grew stronger inside. When they laughed at my obsession, it carried me forward. And when they said the game would break me, I shattered every limit instead. What you just watched wasn't just a football story. It was a story of commitment, of discipline, of a kid who had nothing, but believed like he had everything. It was years of training in silence, crying in cold dorm rooms, eating whatever I could find, and dreaming what no one around me had the courage to imagine. And if you're watching this right now, maybe you're carrying doubts too. Maybe the world told you you're not good enough, that you're too small, that it's too late, that no one from your street, your school, your body will ever make it. But let me tell you this, it's not the world that decides that. It's you. It's what you do when no one's watching. It's how long you keep going after the pain begins. It's how loud you believe when the world goes quiet. Mindset beats talent, and effort crushes every statistic. Cristiano Ronaldo wasn't built on luck. He was forged through sacrifice. And that's why this story inspires. Because if he made it, who's to say you can't? If this story moved you, drop a comment below and tell us what city and country you're watching from. And write, I won't give up either. You subscribe to Be On The Game. Turn on the notifications and leave a like so you never miss a true story like this. About people who were underestimated and turned pain into glory. Here, we tell the stories no one saw. Here, we honor the ones who were ignored. And here you'll learn that the game can be bigger than the scoreboard.